because over time we find that the giants were killed, and they were easy targets because you could say, okay, this is a Nephilim, look, they're a giant, or so forth. And so David and others, were very effective at taking them out. So they had to come up with a new plan, and this was a new plan. A little more DNA manipulation, a little more human-looking, and then they begin to come out, as it says in the prophecy there of Jacob and Esau, that they now dwell in the fatness of the land and in the rich and luxurious places. And so now they've taken on what I call holy garb, or suits and ties. And they're very refined, very wealthy, very powerful, very influential people in high places of government and high places of medical fields and all those sorts of places, and they're among us today.
Now, I just want to be sure I understand what you're saying, and I'm sure our viewers will want this clarified also. So the Nephilim are actually, like, what got left after the flood was the spirit of the Nephilim,
right,
the demon power of
right,
it. So then we see Goliath, who is a giant, who David slew. So he slew flesh and blood because he chopped off the head of that giant, right?
Right.
So Goliath was flesh and blood, but you're saying it was like an offspring of this demonic connection between these demons are still having sex with humans. Is that how they get their human bodies, or do you have any insight on that? And also, what happened after Goliath got slain? What happened? I mean, the body's dead, so what happened to the Nephilim spirit? And we'll find out more about that right after this break.
Order the Nephilim Agenda by Randy Domain. Jesus said, as it was in the days of Noah, so it will also be in the days of the Son of Man. The Nephilim are coming again, positioning themselves to rule the world in degrees of wickedness such as man has never known. Are you ready? Get informed. Call 866-980-5464 and order television offer 111. Or go online at xpmedia.com and purchase the Nephilim Agenda for just $10. Order now.
Well, welcome back with our guest, Randy Domain, with his new book, The Nephilim Agenda. Randy, before we went on a break, we were asking a Power Pack question.
Yes.
What happened to the spirit of Nephilim after the body of Goliath was killed?
Right. Well, we know that when the host body is gone, then the spirit comes out and is looking for another host. Now, interestingly enough, prior to the flood, the earth was one landmass. And so the giants went all over, and the Nephilim, their offspring, went everywhere. And then after the flood, we know at the time of Peleg that the nations were divided like they are now into 7 continents and 7 seas. And so this time, it says in Genesis chapter 6, verse 4, it says that the giants were on the earth in those days, which means prior to the flood, or up to the flood. And then it also says, and then afterwards. Oh. So we know that they came again. And they came back again. Now, what happened? We see their first appearance in the Bible in Numbers 13, where it talks about the giants, where the people went down to the Promised Land and they saw the DNA-altered fruit that was too big to carry. We saw the whole animal structure there had been affected with the Nephilim again. In other words, the Nephilim knew that Moses was going to come in the Promised Land, so they'd already come and corrupted that and tried to work against it. Now, what happens when the Spirit comes out? Well, we know that something happened to Noah, or Noah's sons, because Noah was perfect in all his generations. That's why God chose Noah before the flood, because he was uncorrupted by the Nephilim and by the serpent seed. And so it says it was perfect in all his generations. That doesn't mean morally perfect as much as we'd like to mean, but it just meant that he had not allowed himself to be defiled by the intermingling there.
He was a pure race of man.
He was. And so something happened after the flood, because it says in Genesis 6, and afterwards they were on the earth. And so we know the case where it says that Noah planted a vineyard and he got drunk. Oh, bless Noah, but he messed up because he became uncovered. And his son Ham saw that he was uncovered. And that means a lot of things that could have happened there. But basically, something transpired there which activated an open door for the Nephilim to come back.
Right.
And so they did come back. And we see from Noah's time on, from Ham's time on, where he pronounced a curse, cursed be Canaan. So we see that the line of Canaan from that on began to be an embodiment for that serpent seed, which goes all the way to Goliath and to Og and all the way on. So when those disembodied spirits were left in lingo, they were looking for an open door. And so they began to come back and began to populate again. But this time it was a much smaller type of distribution because the landmass in Peleg's time was divided. So now they're back on the earth, and now David's fighting them. Everybody's fighting them, and so they're back in the land. And so what happens is that when a giant's killed, well, then it's just like Saddam Hussein when he's killed. All those spirits go somewhere. They're looking for another host. And so there's just a repeated resurgence of them as they can find a host all throughout time.
So you're suggesting that even in this hour then, that the Nephilim spirit are still looking for hosts and finding them. And what is their agenda today?
Well, that's a loaded question, but in a good way. It's deception is first and foremost. They're preparing the world to receive the Antichrist as the Messiah. And they're going to do that in a couple of ways. I believe there'll be a returning of them through UFO-type sightings and manifestations. There'll be a working of them as these super soldiers that we know will work with the Antichrist. They'll be almost unstoppable. We also know that they're going to be in high places of influence, which they are today, power brokers of money, finances, and all those sorts of things, population control. So they'll be working all together, that mystery Babylon, that spirit of Babylon, just like Nimrod, by the way, who was a Nephilim king, who came right after Noah's time. He was the first one world ruler. And so from him on, Satan has always wanted another one. And so the Nephilim are working with that Nimrod-type person all the way through to set up the coming of the Antichrist. And they did it so well. I mean, it was the Nephilim that were in the Pharisees and scribes, as we know. Jesus called them what they were. Oh, you brood of vipers. He said, you know, you serpent seed. He called them what they were. You have no redemption. He told them that. Well, they actually convinced the entire Israeli population that indeed that Christ was the bad one, and that the Pharisees were the good one. So there was the deception. They bought it. Instead of the giants killing Jesus, now they came in holy garb, so to speak, and so they twisted the whole thing, and they had their own people kill the Messiah seed, the promised seed, from Genesis 3:15, instead of them having to get their own hands dirty. So the deception is to turn the world again, and to turn the world through understanding, lying, signs, and wonders, every sort of thing imaginable, to prepare the world to receive the Antichrist as the Messiah.
And so the landing strip would be deception. So we need to guard our heart and make sure that we're walking well with God.
Yes.
Because they're giants, they could even go after giants in media, giants in the political realm, giants in the religious fields of the world, and could take the landing strips of those areas to try to have world domination and control.